Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Swaim Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to nonprofit fundraising events. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hello and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. We are excited to have a very special guest joining us today, but have a couple of quick announcements we want to make sure we share. As we're heading into the end of the year, we have Elevate Conference coming up in the spring, and we want to make sure you're marking your calendars and that you are planning to join us March 3rd and 4th. It is a hybrid conference, so you can travel to Portland and join us in person, or you can tune in virtually from anywhere, and we are taking you to Fundraising Event School. We also are excited to announce that with the help of many of our corporate partners, knowing that the nonprofit sector's budgets are being impacted right now, we have scholarship funding and volunteer opportunities available to make sure that access is not a barrier. So we hope you will plan to join us. Today, we are diving into conversations about the changing times that we are in. As we look at the year ahead and 2026 coming around the corner for the nonprofit sector, we see that there are changes with this new bill. We see that there are trends changing in giving and increasing needs, decreasing resources. As we enter the age of post-public funding, we have invited the expert to try to help us prepare for the year ahead. So today's guest, Alice Ferris, is the founder of GoalBusters, providing comprehensive leadership for small nonprofit teams. She has 30 plus years of fundraising experience, deep expertise in the impacted public media, rural healthcare, education, and science funding space.
All the good places.
All the good places being impacted.
All the best places.
She is a mentor, a coach, a speaker, an adjunct faculty member of the University of Denver, an associate member of Roger, the international fundraising think tank. And she is the person that, as I walked through the AFP Icon conference recently, I was told, she's the person you need to talk to. She's amazing. So everyone pointed fingers at Alice and told me, Alice Ferris is the person you needed to be talking to about what organizations are going through in these times. So Alice, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you here. How are you doing?
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. How are you doing in these wild times as you try to help nonprofits through this wildness?
It depends on the day.
Amen.
Although today is one of those days where, you wake up sometimes and you think, why the heck is that in my head? So this morning I had Opalite by Taylor Swift in my head for the whole morning, and I have no idea why. So apparently that's going to be the theme song for my day today.
I like it.
It's a catchy tune. It works. I understand why.
Yeah.
Well, where do you find most of your work and effort is going right now to be able to support people through this?
So as you mentioned in the very generous introduction, I work with a lot of small nonprofit teams. And I think with larger organizations, obviously they're going through struggles as well, but smaller teams and smaller organizations, I think, feel it more acutely.
Mm-hmm.
So in many respects, I think a lot of my work has actually shifted into almost counseling people. To say, look, you're not alone. Good news, bad news, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And there are things you can control. So I think where my attention is split right now is kind of on both ends of the spectrum. I'm working with some organizations on kind of the big strategy on, okay, yeah, we know the sky is falling. How are we going to change what we do fundamentally to be able to get through the next year, 2 years, 3 years, not longer than 3 years, because who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
And then on the flip side of that, I'm working with people who are really in the trenches, who are like, okay, I've just been handed a budget that's a 50% increase. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And the answer is, I'm not sure yet, but how can we take this in little bites? So I find myself almost split between kind of the top part of the process and the implementation part of the process. So it's been kind of a lot of brain gym for me.
What are some of the biggest obstacles you're finding that folks are facing right now in a more nuanced way? I think we can all say, big budget funding or this or that, but within organizations, with those as frames around the work that they're doing or not able to do or whatever that may be, what are the actual obstacles you think they're facing?
That's a good question, because there's the tactical problems
Yeah.
that, I mean, frankly, you can address tactical problems. It's the,
Yeah.
here's a problem, I can figure out a way to solve that. What I was talking to one of my clients and friends, I've been working with this man for 20 years at this point. What I was talking to him about was, he said, it's like a house of cards. You move one thing to try to fix that one thing and the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
And this happens to be a public media organization. And so he's dealing with a 22% budget deficit because of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting rescission vote. And it's not just that it was a 22% cut in his overall budget. It was a 60% cut in his programming budget.
Yeah.
So, the salaries, the equipment, the utilities are covered by the license holder, the university he works with. But the programming budget, the actual content is the thing that got hit. And so he's trying all these different creative problem solving, but he fixes one thing and then that goes over into all sorts of other things. So what I'm trying to reframe in my head about what are these obstacles that organizations are facing is not necessarily about the tactical stuff. It's about change management.
Yeah.
So we're all dealing with this massive change, regardless of what sector you're in, regardless of whether you've been hit by federal funding cuts or not. Everybody is right now dealing with a massive amount of change. And there are ways that people deal with that. There's the way of I'm going to bury my head in the sand and pretend this is not happening and continue to do what I'm doing. And then there's the people who are like gung-ho, let's change everything all at once, which is also not the good reaction. And then there's that in between of how do you deal with kind of the emotional stress, the actual productivity stress, and just the idea of change is always hard. And so how do I deal with it?
Yeah. I think what's interesting too to think about is two things you came up against. One, which we can get into in a little bit, but that opportunity of a 22% deficit, meaning a 60% cut over here. And I feel like those are the nuanced stories we need to get nonprofits to get in front of and frame for donors so that they start thinking about what actually that looks like. Because I think it gets really easy for a donor to hear 22%. Well, it's less than a third and, blah, blah, blah. And then the other piece that is really striking to me is that that doing nothing is actually doing something. And so these people who are like, I'm not going to take action, by virtue of not, you're actually
impacting
things. And I think sometimes people think the wait and see approach means that they're in this hover state, and they're actually not, because the river continues to move by. And if you aren't in it, it's continuing to go without you. So I think that becomes something for people to think about.
Yeah, I'm interested, Alice, in your experience during COVID, if you witnessed that same kind of sense of wait and see from people.
Oh, for sure. I mean, particularly like March, April, and May of 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, really, there were the people who said, oh, geez, this is kind of a BFD and we should proactively do something about it. My best example of that is an organization that is very close to my heart, Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. It's why I moved to Flagstaff from Madison, Wisconsin, because in the late 90s, I was their development director, the second development director in their, at that point, 120-year history.
Wow.
And no pressure. But because I've been associated with this organization for a very long time, I've kind of consulted with them off and on for many years. And their immediate past, their recently retired executive director, Jeff Hall, was the director at the time of COVID. And because he's a scientist, Lowell Observatory was one of the earliest organizations to shut down. And so they shut down, I remember very distinctly, on March 13th, 2020, because it happened to be Percival Lowell's birthday, the founder of Lowell Observatory. And Jeff took this amazingly poignant picture on his phone, walking through the empty parking lot, which should have been their busiest week because it was the start of all the spring breaks.
Right.
Wow.
And so he was one who took it and said, I can control certain things. And so I'm going to take this and work on what I can actually control. And they actually had an outpouring of support from their inner circle because they were proactive and they had the logic behind what they did. And then on the flip side, there's another organization I'm associated with that I won't mention by name, that decided, this is going to be a really tough time for everyone. So we're just going to shut down all of our solicitations until it blows over.
And that organization is doing how right now?
Yeah, well, it was a big enough organization that they could rebound.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
that's good.
But at the same time, when you compare the fundraising results percentage-wise for Lowell Observatory against this much larger institution percentage-wise, their fundraising for at least 2 years was stagnant.
Yep.
Because they said no for their donor, essentially. And they said, you're having a tough time. I'm going to say no for you. And that's something right now that I think I'm seeing parallels in with organizations now where they're like, I don't know what's going on. There's so many things. It's all so scary. I'm just not going to ask. And it's like, no, I don't think that's actually the right strategy.
Yeah, there was kind of the that wait and see moment that we saw in 2020 that we were very quickly learning, like wait and see was going to create a deficit for organizations. And there was research that came out very early on with Jeff Brooks and Stephen Screen where they overlaid every other like moment in world history that had kind of been a wait and see moment to see what the revenue generation in the nonprofit sector was. And there was this really clear message from that sort of graph that they created of don't wait and see, go tell your story, go talk to people. And that's where I'm seeing kind of glimmers of hope right now is that I see organizations leaning a bit more into abundance and realize that with the loss of some of these grants, they're also freed from some of the restrictions of the grants. And they're creating new solutions and other people are stepping in with sort of trust-based philanthropy that isn't as restrictive. And so I'm curious kind of what you're seeing right now in the sector, whether it be leadership change, evolution, and funding that's bringing you some sort of semblance of hope in the middle of the roller coaster ride.
Well, I want to touch back on something about tell your story. And that idea of what do you tell people? Because I'm seeing some organizations right now who are like, I don't know what the solution is. There's so many issues. It's really scary. I'm going to wait until I figure out what the solution is before I share that information with my donors. And then, I mean, I'm trying to convince them that that's the wrong idea.
Totally.
That what it's like, the analogy I use is that if you got a, scary medical diagnosis, some people would be those people who just totally keep it to themselves.
Yeah.
But I think the majority of people would at least share it with their immediate family. And they would probably share it with their inner circle. And so it'd be something like, hey, I just got this scary diagnosis. I don't have the answer as to how I'm going to go get through this. It may end up good. It may end up bad. But here are the steps I'm taking next. And I just really appreciate your support, your emotional support. And people are like, oh, thank you so much for sharing that with me. That's what I'm encouraging nonprofits to do. It's like your donors are essentially that inner circle. So even if you don't have the answer, share that you're working on the answer. In fact, back to my public radio station, it's KAWC in Yuma. We had a major donor step up who says, I need to know what's going on. And we had a meeting with her and laid out the fact that, frankly, we didn't know. To the point of me being incredibly blunt, saying the general manager, executive director, handed me a fundraising budget for this fiscal year that is 100% increase.
Yeah.
And my first reaction to him, which continues to be my reaction to him, is like, you do realize this is monopoly money, right? This is just a number you made up. And he's like, yeah, I kind of do understand that. And we told that to the donors, saying, we've got this huge budget cap. We have no idea how to fill it. And then she went and filled half of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like on the spot. And so that's the kind of stuff that, did we plan to go in and solicit her for that level? No, because frankly, we didn't know she was capable of it. But that's that's what happens when you say, hey, I don't know what the answer is, and someone steps up and wants to help.
Well, there's these moments that people can galvanize to be the superhero.
Yeah.
And how much more resonant that is for her in that moment to be able to actually see the problem, and without that solicitation, because of the investment of time and relationship that had happened before that moment, right? Like these are not just out of thin air things. They are the culmination of continuing to talk to people and what that looks like. And I loved what you said earlier about when you don't ask or you don't share, you say no for donors. And even though in that moment you weren't asking, if you hadn't been honest, you were saying no for her.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm appreciative of the fact that, I feel like we in the nonprofit sector have often compared the abundance mindset and the scarcity mindset. And I'm appreciative of these moments where we realize like there truly is enough. We act as if there is not. We act as if we are in a world of scarcity. I mean, that's like the capitalistic world we're in teaches us a scarcity model and that everything is a piece of pie. But when we start to look toward each other, I'm starting to see, we have mutual aid exploding here we're in Portland, Oregon, and mutual aid is just showing up in ways that, the 7-year-old is figuring out a way to host, lemonade stands to make sure that his classmates are getting fed, and, moms that are like, I'm just going to cook double meals and figure out how to get meals to people.
Yep.
That idea of turning inward to each other and brings up for me that like definitely a sense of hope of when we do connect and share the truth and authenticity and transparency about the moment, it allows us to figure out how to help each other more. It's sort of that Brene Brown philosophy of when we're vulnerable, we can make that deeper connection.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, you're touching on something that is foundational to who I am as a fundraiser. Because so for several years, I taught the CFRE review course. And in an old version of it, the first module was about the history of philanthropy, which frankly, nobody wanted to teach. Because, I'm going to quote Alexis de Tocqueville nonstop for the next hour.
Right.
I actually liked the history module. And part of it was because in that module was the definition of philanthropy. And this is frankly how I ended up leaving my last staff position, because I was having an argument with my boss, and he was trying to convince me that I needed to, or he was directing me to quit all of my volunteer activities. Including at the time my leadership service for the Association of Fundraising Professionals, because any minute I spent with another nonprofit organization was stealing $1 from him.
It's not pie.
Yeah. And so my thing that in a moment of I'm so exasperated with you, I ended up saying something that has become one of those things that I say all the time. And it's what does philanthropy mean? What is the root of that word? And it comes from the Greek. It's philos anthropos, which is love of fellow man.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like telling a parent, whether, human parent or fur baby parent, if you get another child, you're going to love the first child less because you have a limited amount of love. It's like, no, that's not what philanthropy is about. It's like, if you find something else that you love or find another person that you want to care for, you expand the love. It's not like you say, oh, whoa, that's it. So that's the analogy I use to people. It's like, you're not stealing from someone else. You're connecting with that person who will find a way to support you.
Well, and it's not like a box of crayons. Like I just put together my set of crayons of donors and they will be mine at this organization forever. I've done the work. We're good. Let's rinse and repeat. It's dynamic space and we flatten people in such a disrespectful way by not seeing them as full people with a will, with a heartbeat and a mission and a way they want to be and evolve in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I I think to change and the idea of change and the fear around that and control and all of those things creates a lot of that paralyzation
Yeah.
in organizations. How do you coach organizations to really start to determine things that they can control? Because that's sometimes where momentum and traction can happen.
Mm-hmm. So this is something that, so my business partner, Jim Anderson, I have been working with him for 20 years. And actually he's in Portland right now. But one of the things that he taught me was this idea of, is this a problem or a condition? So a problem is something you can solve, resolve, or fix. A condition is something you have to adapt and manage for. And so the first step I usually take is that, first of all, most of the clients I'm dealing with, most of the people I'm dealing with, whether they're, professional colleagues or clients, or people, for just regular people in my life for that matter, we spend a lot of effort trying to solve a condition.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is to look at the whole thing and say, what of this is actually a problem that I can solve?
Yeah.
Going back to COVID for a moment.
Yeah.
COVID was a condition.
Right.
The fact that the world shut down, you couldn't in that moment do anything about that.
Right.
So how do you adapt to it and assume that that's given? I mean, frankly, some of the things going on in the US government, there are many things that are happening in the government that are conditions.
Yep.
And for instance, I mentioned public broadcasting earlier. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting was defunded. And there are people who are doing valiant efforts to try to refund public broadcasting. And I support them in doing that. But for me, as a boots on the ground fundraiser for a couple organizations, I have to assume that money's not coming back.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how do I adapt to that?
Yep.
Now, a problem would be saying no for a donor. It's like, maybe I should just talk to that donor and see what they think. So how can I first reduce the list to what are the actual problems I can solve?
Yep.
And then on a regular basis, back to the coaching question. I have one VP of development that I'm working with where he keeps trying to solve a condition. and I keep coming back to, is this a problem or a condition? He's like, oh yeah, dang it.
That's a great frame.
I know.
That's
I feel like we
frame.
all need to sign up for therapy with Alice. I feel like
I plan to take that out of this room, by the way.
I also
Thank you for
plan to
that.
take that out of this room. I want to talk about transparency because a lot of what you're talking about is transparency. So in all of your examples that you're giving of communicating to donors, you're having these honest conversations, maybe even to the point of saying, I don't know, or we don't have the answer, or maybe even saying this is a problem we need to solve versus a condition we're living in. How important is that right now in being able to move forward and being able to take action so that you're not in wait and see mode?
Mm-hmm. I think it has always been important.
Yes.
I think, but nowadays, especially with all of the misinformation and disinformation that you can get from all of the sources, I think it is even more critical to be incredibly, almost overly transparent. It's this idea of, I have nothing to hide, which frankly is a misnomer. Everyone, every organization, every person has something to hide. But so I'm not saying just totally, lay everything out and say, yeah, well, here you go.
Right.
There still is some level of confidentiality. But I think the transparency piece, which I think is a little bit different than just revealing everything, is about what can I share honestly and with my own organization's procedures and policies, and where can I say, here's the line, but I can tell the donor or tell the community person, here's the line, and here's why.
Yeah.
I think what frustrates people is when you say, hey, I can't tell you that. Well, why? And you don't answer that.
Right.
And you're just like, nope, that's locked behind this wall. And I think that's top of mind because I was dealing with something related to that this morning of an institution that was like 96% federally funded, who has all of these procedures in place to be compliant with their federal funding sources. And now we're showing momentum on the private philanthropy side. And they don't know how to switch gears. They don't know how to go from a federally funded organization to a philanthropically supported organization. And so they're trying to apply the same, inspector general type policies and procedures to, a 88-year-old woman in Arizona. And, one of these things is not like the other.
Right.
And so being able to say to her as a human, here's why we have these rules. And yes, we know they're not quite right, and we're working on it, is transparent.
Yes.
Just telling her, no, this is the rule and you have to abide by it.
Right.
Is not the same.
Oh, what a great example.
Well, and to run that out, that lack of transparency actually does start to create a vibe for you and the donor, right? So they're all of a sudden, they feel like they are on the out when theoretically you thought you were having that conversation to bring them in. But by how you're approaching that conversation, they actually leave more confused and question marky than they came in, and wondering like, are they ever going to tell me? Why can't they tell me? Like, no matter what you say in that moment, by doing the reveal that is the non-reveal, you're potentially in trouble with that donor.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the example I gave you, we did err on the side of the conversation of the, hey, look, we know we're trying to adapt.
Yeah.
And it's not an overnight process to change this, because these things are really deeply ingrained in the organization. And she's like, well, okay. And we gave her the space to say, I'm going to come back later. When you have more of this figured out. And so you have to also be willing to, as I like to say, bless and release that donor, or bless and release that person to say, okay, maybe this isn't the right time, or maybe your priorities have shifted. And we're going to see a lot of that over the next several months and years.
For sure.
Yes.
There's something in that story, though, that brings me so much hope, in that the restrictions and policies that they have been so held to now have perhaps some breathing room. And while it's really hard to make that shift, like that is a really, 96% funded creates a lot of policy and rules, but it also creates a lot of restrictions by people who are not in the work doing the work. And I have no idea what this institution does, but so often we find that those big foundation grants, the like government grants, create some restriction when the people in the community on the ground doing the work often see a better, easier, cheaper path to solution. That I have a little hope in that story that there's some freedom that comes with it eventually. The change is hard. Because sometimes the change also means like restaffing and rethinking what your jobs and responsibilities are. You're no longer a contract manager. You're a donor relations manager. Like those are two very different things.
They are.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a quick break, and we are going to thank some of our amazing partners who make these conversations possible. When we come back, we are going to continue our conversation about trust and missteps. We'll be right back.
Ready for your hard work to yield more funds at your next event? Join us at Elevate, a nonprofit fundraising event conference designed to bring our community together and make planning successful events easier. Register today for this hybrid conference on March 3rd and 4th, 2026 in Portland, Oregon, or join us online from anywhere. This isn't just another conference. You'll walk away with battle-tested strategies, hands-on tools, and proven templates that top fundraisers use to raise millions. Your mission deserves fully funded success. Register today at swaimstrategies.com.
Hello, welcome back to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. We're here with Alice Ferris talking about the changes, the evolution, shifts, especially looking ahead at the year. And before the break, we were talking about transparency. And in the news in the past few months, there's been a conversation that has occurred specifically in this sector about GoFundMe. So recently, GoFundMe Classy had a merger, and GoFundMe, a crowdsourcing app for individual donors, merged with a platform that does fundraising for nonprofit organizations. And in that merge, they saw the opportunity in hopes of creating, my understanding based on their media was in hopes of creating more resource to the nonprofit sector. They scrubbed the internet, developed $1.4 million or 1.4 million fundraising pages for 1.4 million nonprofits, utilizing their logos, their addresses, their mission statements, and their EIN numbers at sort of the peril, I think, to the nonprofit of usurping the nonprofit's visibility, meaning that GoFundMe is a platform that gets a lot of activity and a lot of traction. Therefore, it has very, very high SEO, very, very high brand trust. And in that, all of a sudden, all these organizations had fundraising pages developed for them that they may or may not have known about. And then it required an action step on behalf of the nonprofit that they had to go in and they had to apply to be able to accept the funds, or they had to request that it be shut down. So that was a lot of extra work on behalf of the nonprofit. And in addition to that, there were other implications like not being able to see in a timely fashion when people were donating to you, not being able to collect on those funds in a timely way, also a tip being added by the platform to the donor without transparency to the organization. So it created this conversation in the sector about trust, about transparency, about how we create trust with donors or with our donors, or create distrust. And GoFundMe has been doing some work to kind of backstep. There are other platforms like this that exist that have done similar things. They don't have the same SEO and visibility of GoFundMe. So I think this is why it got the the big conversation. Right. But I'm curious from your work, Alice, if sort of what you think the implications of overreach like this are in an era where technology might be faster than we are and could have impact in how we do our work and how donors engage with us.
Yeah, this was a very active chat on so many channels that I am on. It was like one day I was like, oh, what's going on? And then it's like, boom.
Boom.
So there's just so many issues, which you already highlighted, Sam. And I think some of the things that were takeaways for me is that the fact that there are going to be those organizations that are aware this is happening, and they're going to take those proactive steps, but the vast majority will not.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the piece that was most concerning to me is the fact that, as you said, people would have to apply to essentially release money that was already donated. And if they didn't do that process, that the money would essentially stay with GoFundMe.
Yeah.
Which just seemed like totally the opposite of what we should be doing when it comes to fundraising.
Right.
The closest analogy I could think of for this was, so I'm a total foodie. When I go to a new city, my first step is to figure out what restaurants I'm going to eat at. And so I'm on Yelp all the time. And when you go to Yelp and you go to a restaurant, you will frequently encounter is this your business? Claim it here.
Right.
Right.
So it's really upfront with the fact that, we scraped some data off of the internet to create this page, or people, fans or people who are not so much fans, created this page instead of the company. But it's really upfront that the information on this page has not been vetted.
Right.
Yep.
I think GoFundMe totally could have saved a little bit of face by just doing that, saying this page is unclaimed right up front. But to your point about the SEO too, it's like most people, back to the restaurant example, if you are searching for a restaurant in Portland and you're like searching for a particular restaurant, very seldom is Yelp the first choice, or, TripAdvisor or whatever it is, if that organization has their own website.
Right.
The difference here is that because of the SEO on GoFundMe, it totally could flip. Where you would see the GoFundMe page first. The other layer to add on to that is AI. So what are the LLMs going to be scraping? They're going to be scraping the ones with the biggest data set. And so they would potentially say, oh, and here's all this information about this organization that totally was coming from an artificial and incorrect page on GoFundMe, as opposed to being from the organization's site. So, good news, bad news about this. One, you mentioned in my introduction that I'm adjunct faculty for University of Denver. One of the 2 classes that I teach, I had the privilege of designing the course. It's technology strategy for fundraising.
Amazing.
Love it.
We should all take that course.
Yeah, it's like every day I feel like I need to revise this course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this entire case is going to end up in my next term's class
Yeah.
because this has so many different layers, because not only do you have the technology of okay, wait, how could they actually do this?
Right.
Yeah.
And even 2 years ago, they probably couldn't have done it to this level.
Right.
But the fact that they could put these essentially bots in place to scrape all the data off of the 990s to create these pages, that in itself is a pretty significant technological advance. But then you also have these ethical issues of should they have done it in the first place,
Right.
and what should they have disclosed, and what would have been the transparent thing to do.
Yep.
So yeah, this from an educator's perspective,
Yeah.
I'm really happy about the GoFundMe debacle, but
Well,
for nonprofits, not so much.
well, and 2, I keep thinking about the human implication.
Yeah.
There's a technological thing that is, and that has implications for humans. But I'm thinking too about this usurping of space that should be ceded to the nonprofit in name of relationship development.
Yeah.
So basically, they have stepped in and said, we are equating transactions to equal philanthropy, which at its core is effed, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the opposite of what the 3 of us in this room are beating the pavement to do every day in the nonprofit sector, is to debunk that, right?
Yeah.
And also, I think about that individual donor who, in good stead, with best intentions and with money they may or may not have, got told a story about a mission they connected to enough to click.
Yeah.
And I think about how underwater that organization is with those donors already, regardless of if they claim that page or not, by not being able to say thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
And it is also creating this wave of doubt
Yeah.
about philanthropy and the sector, which we do not need to compound
Right.
right now in terms of what's happening in terms of stories, right? What's real and what are stories. And this just feeds into a narrative that makes me crazy.
Well, also, when you look at like the donor experience, the thing that's unique about that particular platform is that it's mostly individuals that are using
peer-to-peer.
it. It's peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
So the reward you get for giving is that personal connection. Your friend saying to you, oh my God, thank you so much. That $100 made a difference in my goal. You helped to feed a family. You helped us with our emergency we were going through. You get that like personal validation. And so donors report that they're giving through GoFundMe is more rewarding because of the personal connection, the immediate gratification, the personal storytelling. They just removed that. Like they literally removed it. That let's say you hear a really like do good story about someone in your local news doing something amazing and they've started a small nonprofit. They may not have the visibility. They may not even have their website up yet. And they might have something very simple. And now the GoFundMe page just usurped that. And all of a sudden, this news story generates hundreds and thousands of dollars of donations, and the organization has no idea. The funds are sitting there. The donors aren't getting thanked. And it totally just like tanked that idea of the instant gratification benefit of being a donor through that platform. So I want to take that class from you next term after you've dove further into this.
Yes, keep us posted.
Well, and related to what you just said, that personal connection, it's called GoFundMe. Not go fund some random organization that is not connected to me at all.
Right.
And so there is a good use of GoFundMe for nonprofit organizations, because my sister is the executive director of St. Louis Sudbury School, which is a very, very small independent school that has a philosophy of essentially learning as play. So it's a very unstructured environment. So it's for a very unique and, in many respects, almost overly gifted student who just can't deal with the structure of traditional school. And she does her fundraising through GoFundMe. And so it gives her this tool to be able, at a very low cost,
Yeah.
to be able to set up this page. But she has control over that page.
Yes.
And frankly, most of her donors are related to her. And so she can see right away if I've made a donation to her campaign, and she can reach out to me immediately and say, and just text me, say, hey, Alice, thank you so much for your donation. And I love what you said about the fact that we stripped that connection away with this issue.
Yeah.
And that is the strength of GoFundMe, and they should actually double down on that as opposed to overreaching and doing this thing that really took that connection away.
Just because AI can doesn't mean AI should.
Well, and that's the argument all day long.
Yeah.
So since we're talking debacles, let's continue. Several changes coming our way from the big bill passed last year at the federal level. Let's talk about them. What are you seeing? What are some of the immediate implications of that? And what do you see sort of continuing to evolve?
So many things. I think one of the things that was probably the most crushing for me personally, as well as for several of the organizations I'm associated with, was how much, for the first time really in recent memory, the federal government, Congress, essentially set aside this idea of taking care of the least advantaged in our country.
Yeah.
Because that's who's going to feel the impact of this the most. And there are going to be those people who continue to have resources who are not going to be as severely impacted. But I had always had this idea in my head that the United States was a democracy that wanted to lift up those people that needed the help the most. Now, back to Alexis de Tocqueville. When he was coming to the United States in the 1700s and observing the weirdness that was the infant United States of America, one of the things that he says in his book is about this strange concept of private citizens taking care of the social needs of the country, of the community. And that was a totally foreign concept at the time, because in Europe, it was, you had churches and you had governments who took care of those people who were in poverty, who were destitute, that sort of thing. And this was the first time that he, as a European, as a Frenchman, observed this idea of people helping each other. And so I think, thinking about the bill and some of the changes that we're going to be seeing that are already happening, that are happening, frankly, right now.
Yeah.
It's how much are we going to be able to come together as a community, particularly with as polarized as we are as a country right now, to help your fellow man. And looking at people who do step up and try to help other humans in the community. They're not necessarily going to be asking, well, who did you vote for? But it's like almost as you go up the ladder in terms of ability to support, those questions come up more and more and more.
Yeah.
So if you are closer to that person in terms of economic status that needs help, you're going to help them regardless. But if you're that person who is more removed from that economic status, you are potentially going to say, well, I'm not sure I'm going to help them. And that's one thing that really concerns me, of people kind of editing their support based on, well, I don't know who you voted for.
And it's interesting too to think of the burnout factor element that I see occurs in that situation, because it basically places everyday citizens as emergency responders. And so as emergency responders, you go in quick and fast, and in that fast, you are responding to the immediate crisis at hand. So if, a storm comes through, everyone is in rebuild, repair, help each other, find people, like that emergency responder mode. If food is removed, people are in immediate, where are other food resources? How do we find solutions? Let's all put, our resources together. But the person who is on the front line doing that work day in and day out hits super high burnout at some point. And then the question is, who's the next person to take that if we're always in emergency response mode? And I think that oftentimes leadership in the nonprofit sector is that way. We are constantly in like exposure to trauma, re sort of stepping into the emergency responder mode. How do you think between this bill and just the changes, this ask of like everyday individuals to be of support of each other, which is, definitely something I subscribe to and believe in wholly, but also see the stressors and pains of, how do you think that's going to change leadership in the sector? Like, where are we going with sort of the leadership shifts, changes, needs? What's being asked of leaders?
I will say right now, I'm dealing with several organizations, both as a consultant and as just someone affiliated with that organization, where the leadership is saying, you know what, I've been doing this for decades. I'm tapping out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they were thinking they were going to retire anyway, but this has been the catalyst to say, I've brought this organization through a lot of different changes, and I think it's time to pass the baton. And I both mourn that and celebrate it.
Yep.
I mean, the people who've made the proactive decision to say, look, I'm not the leader to get through this. I actually have applauded them of saying, thank you for making space for someone else to be able to say, hey, I want to take this over. I want to run with this. I want to take it through this challenge. And I think where we're going to struggle the most with leadership are the organizations where they may have a leader who's been there for a long time or even not that long of a time, and they think they're the right person to get through the change, and they're not.
Yeah.
And so then it's going to fall down back to your point about the, people essentially becoming frontline essential workers.
Yep.
It's going to fall to those people to essentially manage around the condition of this leader who won't move on. So I think that we're going to see a lot of transition at the executive level. Some of it is very much needed. Some organizations are frankly going to struggle because they've had a leader who was keeping the organization going by sheer force of will. And with all the financial challenges and all the staffing challenges and just life challenges, if that person moves on, have they actually cultivated someone to take their place?
Yeah.
And have they created an organization where someone can take their place?
Yep.
Because we're actually dealing with a leadership transition with one organization right now. And I've already told him, your job needs to be split into 3 different jobs. And he gives me like, yeah, I know. But we're going to see that happen. And I actually was coaching someone just recently who was just a networking call, and he wants to shift into the nonprofit sector from the for-profit sector. And I said, well, here's what you should be looking for, because organizations are actually, once they get past this initial downsizing and in some cases right sizing of their organization, they're going to start rehiring in positions that strategically make more sense. And maybe that's when you sweep in to get one of those positions. So I told them, look at Q1, Q2 next year, where we're going to see more positions posted, I think, next year, but they're going to be way different than they were the positions that were let go.
Yeah. You just touched on like a series of things that we're going to sort of walk through a couple of different pieces, and I want to collapse them all into kind of one big question. Because I wanted to ask you about sort of strategic planning and how organizations go from here, funding but ultimately I just want to ask, how do you advise organizations to move forward in light of all of the big changes in their own staffing, in their own needs, in their policies, in their, funding resources, and how that changes structure? I so often see organizations working on 3 and 5 year strategic plans and are now kind of adrift. So how are you coaching organizations to be able to address tomorrow in the middle of this crazy, like, where are we headed?
Yeah. I think there's a couple levels to it. And one of them requires what my friend Tan Pham, founder of Asian Efficiency, likes to call thinking time. And so it requires actually just setting aside some time to ruminate on big problems when you're not thinking about the tactically, what am I doing tomorrow? That in itself is a discipline.
Yeah.
So I do encourage people, it's like even if it's just an hour, spend an hour thinking about if you were starting this organization today, regardless of the age of your organization, the size of your organization, if you could start over, what would this organization look like? It's not like anyone I have talked to actually has the ability to make that switch, although a couple have come close. But it's if this is what it should look like, based on if you were starting right now today, given the conditions that we have, without worrying about incumbents, just talking about the roles, what organizationally structure would you look like? What budget would you have? Would you change your mission? Everything's on the table. And it's always interesting to see how it's not as far off as you think sometimes. Because people get caught in this thing of oh no, what's in structure right now, I can't change that. And in fact, back to Jim for a moment, my business partner, he said at our 2024 team retreat, he said, the clients that we have the most challenge with are the ones who are unwilling to have hard conversations with staff members and unwilling to make difficult HR decisions. So it all comes down to the people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have the right people in the right seats, just to quote Jim Collins for a moment, if you don't have the right people on the bus and you don't have them in the right seats, then your bus isn't going to go very far.
It doesn't matter if you paint it purple. It really doesn't matter.
Or, Partridge Family scheme.
Yeah.
Well,
so I think that looking at, some of the changes that we have going forward, and to the point about I'm going to see positions posting next year, I think. That's my crystal ball. It really is about do you have the right people in the right seats with the right tools? And you potentially will need to make a lot of difficult changes. And that's going to be hard. But in order do you want the mission to succeed? Do you want the organization to succeed? Then you're probably going to have to rearrange some seats.
Yeah, that's hard. Those are hard conversations. And yet, I don't know, for a really long time, we've said these systems are in place and they're not working and we need to, this is a systemic issue. We need to start over, start fresh, new page. This is it. It's happening. The old isn't there anymore. So now it's the rebuild. And I love that organizations aren't that far from maybe where they need to be.
Well, and again, sort of going back to the people idea, when those postings start coming up next year, as somebody looking to move within the sector or somebody to come into the sector, there's the potential of that actually being right.
Yeah.
In more ways for organizations that have done that work. And I think that confidence of people coming into those roles in the sector can also be a real buoy for those organizations, getting those people beyond what's on their resume and their talents, that they're coming in going with that confidence, like this organization has done that structural work.
Yeah.
Even if nothing changed, but there's a confidence about, no, we have it right. And we just need to stay the course, or we're changing all of these things, but we know these changes are the direction we need to go. That's a completely different way to come into an organization with your time and talent than somebody who's like, I don't know, we're going to give it a shot. And we have no idea if this is right for us. It's different to say, no, we know this is right for us. It might be bumpy, but this is the right decision.
I can give you one concrete example. An organization I was working with, we went through a campaign study and realized as part of that campaign study that they needed to be completely reorged. Yeah. And so I have recommended that. I can count on one hand how many times in my 30 plus year career that I've recommended that. And 2 out of the other 3 times, they just said, oh, we're no.
Correct. That's too much. That's too much. Too much.
And the third one is the organization I'm going to tell you about that actually did it. And part of it included demoting the executive director.
Oof.
So not to be completely honest, not an easy conversation.
No.
And one that was like this close to blowing up. And she, to her credit, said, okay, I understand it. She came back and said, I'm willing to do this. I'm not happy about it. I mean, frankly, every meeting I had with her for several months, she glared at me and I don't blame her.
Right.
because I was responsible for triggering this change.
Yep.
But I remember very distinctly, maybe about 6 months in, I was on a one-on-one call with her. And she said, so here's the thing. You rewrote my job description. You demoted me. And you took away everything that I don't like to do and left me all the things that I'm actually good at.
Yes.
I said, yeah. And she says, I love this job.
Yeah.
And, 3 years later, one of our goals as part of that study was we ask the people we interview, who do you think are the top 3 charities in the community? Not a single one named this organization. 3 years later, they got an award from the local community foundation as the top nonprofit of the year.
Wow.
And so their team right now, it's like 5 years after that transition, is like completely clicking.
That's great.
And it's because she was willing to make that change and willing to make a personal sacrifice.
Yeah.
To be able to see the bigger picture for the success of the organization. And
Yeah.
so it can happen.
Yeah.
It's
And I'm
scary,
hopeful.
but it's brave leadership when it does happen.
It is.
Exactly.
Well, when we come back, I feel like we need to make sure that we talk all of the ways that people can work with you.
Yes.
So we'll be right back.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the Fundraising Elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your programming and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at swaimstrategies.com. You can also find the link in our show notes.
All
Welcome
right.
back. We are here with Alice Ferris. We are talking about change being the constant and how we're all going to get through. And it's with smart people helping create the bigger picture that people can see themselves in, and coming together. So talk to us about your work with the Fundraising Effectiveness Project.
So this is a project that I kind of geek out about on a regular basis, but the Fundraising Effectiveness Project is a collaboration between the Association of Fundraising Professionals and Giving Tuesday. And it was originally founded many years ago by a group of data nerds who really wanted to see, okay, what kinds of trends can we look at in the fundraising sector? And how can we take the information that a lot of data providers have and consolidate that information and see trends? And really the point about the Fundraising Effectiveness Project that is most cited is the overall donor retention statistics. And if you've ever talked about donor retention, you know that the statistics nationally are terrible.
Terrible.
They're not great. They're not great.
And so the action step that has frequently come out of okay, what do we do with this data other than say, oh my God, this is terrible? The thing that we try to do is give people actionable steps to say, what does the data tell you to look at?
Yep.
And so I'm on the steering committee for the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and I co-chair the Fundraisers Committee, which is a collection of both staff fundraisers and consultants who are looking at, again, how do we make the FEP actionable? And we're in the process right now of kind of completely blowing up what the FEP is, because it was a much more data wonk oriented report up until this point. And what our committee has been pushing on, which is completely supported by the rest of the steering committee, is how do we make this something that an individual fundraiser can use?
Yep.
So one of the tools that's included under the FEP project, FEPreports.org is the website, I believe, is the Fundraising Fitness Test, which I use almost all the time. And it is a free tool that people can download and take their own data file. And my thing is export as much as you can without, blowing up your computer. But if you export the date of the gift, a donor identifier, so a donor ID, don't need any contact information, and the amount of the gift. That's all you need is those 3 fields. And you copy and paste all this data into the template, which is an Excel spreadsheet that's macro enabled. You may have to get your IT department to say yes, bless and release.
Yep.
Or you might just walk away from your computer depending on the size of your data file, because it'll take a while to crunch it. But the thing I like about it is that it generates the stats for you. It generates what is your overall donor retention rate? What is your new donor, first-time donor retention rate? What is your lapsed recapture rate? What is it by these different dollar segments? So that, for instance, we talked about this with one of my clients last week. We see that the donor retention for our lowest level under $100 donors is terrible. It's like awful, awful, awful.
Yeah.
But our retention for the $1,000 and up donors is actually pretty good. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we, one, look at the lower level donors and try to retain them more and automate their donor journey so they actually get a donor journey? And also, how do we look at the mid-level givers and try to upgrade them to the higher level givers, because then, you know, they'll get more attention and then their retention rate will improve and the dollar amount will improve. So it has helped us guide the annual giving strategy to be able to say consciously, here's where our most productive, we need to focus some effort segment is. And here's where maybe we just need to automate it more. And here's where we're doing pretty good. So just keep doing what we're doing so that we don't screw it up. So that's one way that we've used the FEP to really try to shape logical and data-based action. But at the same time, we know that not everyone's going to be that wonky. And so how can we make the tools more user-friendly? So that's kind of the future of the FEP, hopefully within the next year.
That's so great. We will link to this in the show notes for all of you who just went, ooh, I need that.
We will make sure you have it, because I think having that becomes a different conversation when you're able to talk to your team, but also to your board about understanding some of that, you know, sort of journey, that data information. I think that we all have anecdotes, but sometimes we find shocking information in the actual data. So, well, we ask all of our guests here at the Fundraising Elevator, what tip, what recommendation, how can organizations keep heading up? As we sign off with you, what do you feel like is one tip or one piece of advice that you would give nonprofits right now?
Well, you alluded to something earlier, Sam, about 3 to 5 year plans and they're adrift. I think it becomes incredibly overwhelming to try to think about, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do in the next year. I don't know what I'm going to do in the next 2 years. I don't know what I'm going to, and it feels so permanent when you talk about those longer timescales. So one of the things that I have encouraged people more than ever right now, it's been a tip of mine for years, but it is, I think, more relevant now, is shorten your planning time horizon. One of the tools that I use is the 12-week year. And this book is a model of how you essentially turn a 12-month plan, which is kind of the overall vision, but turn it into 12-week action plans. And I use it for my own personal development. I do a quarterly retreat every quarter where I spend a day building out the 12-week year for the next quarter. And the nice thing about it is that if things blow up, just start over. Do another 12 weeks. Just say, nope, things are really weird right now. We're going to reset. But don't really worry too much about you still have to keep it in mind. But if you can just like shorten your time horizon, it becomes much less overwhelming to say, no, I can actually get that done. And being able to check off those things of look, I had success, makes everyone feel, I think, a little bit more normal in our tumultuous times.
Yeah.
That's great.
We're all striving for how to get through the tumultuous times. I don't know if we're striving for normal. Normal, I don't know, that there is such a thing anymore.
Agency.
Actually, let me throw in one little quick quote from one of my clients that I've been quoting her for months now. She said, she started a meeting one day and she says, you know, Alice, just for one day, I'd like to live in precedented times.
Yes, that's exactly right. That is exactly
That is the better phrase right there.
Is.
Well, Alice, if folks want to understand your work more, get to know you, work with you, how do they find you? What's the best way to get to know a little bit more about you?
Well, our website is at GoalBusters.net. And we do also have a presence on Facebook and Instagram. and YouTube, if for some reason you want to watch a bunch of videos of Jim and myself walking to a plane on the tarmac in Flagstaff, Arizona. But those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me, or you can just email me at alice.ferris@goalbusters.net.
Excellent. Well, Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for diving into all the ebbs and flows and changes coming. But I feel like having experts in the middle of the eye of the storm brings a lot of calm and sort of presence and next steps. So thank you for being that person for so many organizations. And I hope you have a great rest of your year.
Thank you so much to you both.
Thank you.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced by Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by John Collier. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Friends, before we leave you, we want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please follow, subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, please share it with a friend and leave a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.